The Anglo Saxon government. So, under the Anglo Saxons, England was the most well organised and well run kingdom in Europe because it was centralised, and the king was at the centre. Most European countries had monarchs, but they didn't have the detailed involvement in running their kingdom in the same way the King of England did. The king was the government, and the government was the king, more or less. He was responsible for defending his country and his people, for passing good laws that would protect them, and to defend the Christian church. Now, of course, he couldn't do all of this on his own, so he had different people who helped him: earls, nobles, bishops and archbishops, advisors, landowners, and so on. Together, these people were his royal court. They helped the king make decisions and see them through. The most important of these people were part of a small group called the Witan. They were the most important nobles and archbishops in the land, and they gave the king advice at special times in the year or during major events. They were the most powerful men in the country, and the king would often have to keep them happy by showing that he was listening to their views, which helped keep them loyal. The most important job of the Witan, though, was that they chose the next king when the last one died. It was not automatic that it would pass on to his son, not yet. The Witan had that power. So, this was the national government. The king, the nobles, and the bishops, and the other big cheeses that helped run things from the centre. So how did things actually get done? Well, this is where a really organised and well-planned local government comes into play. Firstly, England was divided up into earldoms, which were run by an earl, such as the Earl of East Anglia, the Earl of Wessex, or the Earl of Northumbria. Earls were the most powerful people in England, aside from the king. They had huge amounts of land and wealth and called up soldiers to help fight when needed. But an earldom was itself very big, so they divided it up into shires and hundreds. So basically, an earldom was divided into shires. So East Anglia, for example, would be divided into Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, and Cambridgeshire. These shires would have thanes running the land. If you remember, these were the warrior elite of Anglo Saxon society. One thane would be appointed as a Shire Reeve, which became known as a sheriff. They would get orders from their earl, or directly from the king sometimes, and put them into place, such as to put criminals on trial, raise soldiers for an army, or collect special taxes. So, earldoms broken up into shires. A shire was then divided into smaller units called hundreds. They were small areas of about 12 villages, and they had a reeve appointed who would deal with less serious problems that didn't need the Shire Reeve, or sheriff's, attention. Earldom, shire with a Shire Reeve, hundred with a reeve. Smaller parcels of land with a bloke in charge to help make sure the king's orders were carried out. So how did he know what the king's orders were? Well, here is one of the simplest and most effective creations of the Anglo-Saxons, the writ. This was a document with the king's orders on, which would be sealed with a wax seal showing the mark of the king, so you know it came from him, and sent directly to the Shire Reeve, or the Earl. So if the king wanted people in East Anglia to, for example, raise an army because he was worried about being invaded, his administrators would write up a bunch of these writs, attach the king's seal to it, and send them off to the Earls, thanes, Shire Reeves, and they would get them done. And they'd know this was an order direct from the king, so they better get onto it. It was a simple and easy to understand system. Nowhere else in Europe had this level of organisation, and it made England easy to run in comparison to other kingdoms.